Here is week two's presentation lecture on commonly missed concepts. That's going to probably be on the Unit 1 exam in week three. So this week in week two, we're going over the self and how you as an individual or just individuals in general fit in the social world as we see it. A lot of this stuff is mental errors that you'll be learning on some of those concepts, and basically just different concepts on how an individual defines themselves within that social world. All right. So to start off with, some of the common mental errors that are noted about in the book, spotlight effect and illusions of transparency. And I lump these two together because there's a misunderstanding sometimes of this, where they sound very similar. But just remember that there's definitely a big difference between the two. Spotlight effect is basically an individual who thinks that others are paying more attention to their appearance and behavior than they actually are. So appearance is outward, behavior is outward. Okay, so it's how someone's acting or how they look. Illusions of transparency is just somebody assuming, an individual assuming that others actually know the mental state of that person. They basically can mind read what that person is thinking. That mental state's known by others. When in reality, nobody really knows what you're thinking. You can have a poker face and be sad. You can be happy and look sad. So it's just the assumption that other people know what you're thinking. And sometimes that's when you look across the room and maybe you see somebody looking at you like almost like, why does that person look guilty? Maybe that individual's assuming that others knows what's going on in their mind and they don't. Okay, so we can only see outward appearances and behavior. Moreover, the spotlight effect actually is people think that they're on center stage and that everybody, all the eyes are on them, and that's a big, huge overestimation. Are they really paying attention to that individual? Are they really paying attention to you? Probably not. As we see Lawson's study in 2010, for an example, the American Eagle study, college students went out in public and they wore a sweatshirt with an American Eagle on it. Lawson's predicted a 40% of the population that those college students were around would remember the American Eagle, when actually only 10%. So think about if there was just 40 people in a room, which is a pretty decent sized room, and only four people remembering the American Eagle. That's really not a whole lot. Think about if it was 100 people, only 10 people would know or remember that American Eagle on the sweatshirt. So if you look at it from that perspective, not many people would actually be paying attention. So take it easy on yourselves. If you feel stressed, like you walk in a room and you feel like everybody's looking at you, probably not. You're probably pretty safe. There's other contributing factors just to kind of go over on how individuals could project or behave in front of others other than just spotlight and illusion of transparency, because those two things, the spotlight effect and illusion of transparency, do impact how people behave in front of others. There's the social surroundings, there's differences in race, gender, ethnicity, self-interest, social judgment on yourself and others. Nobody wants to blame, so the self-interest of promoting yourself in a good way also helps contribute to those mental errors. Self-concern, you're worried about your self-image. Social relationships, you're definitely going to act different towards your friends in front of mom and dad, so you're not going to act the same. um, where do these viewpoints, personal views, come from? Self schemas. So we actually create a mental template of ourself. Maybe we're athletic, smart, funny, attractive, or that's what we want to be, or that's what we want to project. And so with those self schemas, we try to actually, as we analyze ourselves, project that off to people that are in our surrounding environment. Social comparison also drives our behavior. Like I said, your surrounding environment, parenting, your parents, neighborhood friends. When you go to church, you act different. You act more probably modest and appropriate versus when you're out with your friends watching a game at a restaurant. Totally different. Social media is huge. We measure ourselves by what we see on social media. Am I like them? I want to also give the appearance and sell myself as somebody that is also likable, also happy, also doing a lot of good things. And also, how many times do we see on social media like Facebook where people are always, you know, adding bad things, like they want to look like they need attention, where they get the replies, sorry this happened. Oh, another problem happened this week. Oh, I'm sorry this happened. And so social media could be used for a positive and negative thing for sure. The looking glass self is another concept that I want students to make sure they pay attention to. It's basically it's who we are, our self concept. Our self concept is not how others actually see us, but the way we imagine they see us. So we're trying to look at how everybody around us views us, and we just think that that's and we just make that assumption, right? So just to kind of go more into detail is we use this to create our behavior. So we look at everybody around the room and we assume what they're thinking, and then we try to reflect what we think they're thinking and act that way in front of them, which can be kind of very dangerous because we can't read people's minds. We're just looking at facial expressions. Person with a weird look on their face, someone might think, oh, they're judging me this way, when in reality, they might be just having a bad day. So never take body language or an assumption of somebody's thought processes on you as a way to create some kind of behavior. Okay. Um, we guess who, let's see here, sacrifice of the self. So that's huge because you don't want to imagine what other people's look at you like or what they think who you are, and then react a certain way that you're going to regret. Also, there's a lot of times we sacrifice of the self. So how many times has even I've been guilty of this? How many times have we actually suppressed a thought process, a belief, or kind of hid who we really were or are just so that we can be accepted? And so that's also part of the looking glass self. Parts of the self view. So there's a huge difference between self esteem and self efficacy. Self esteem is your personal worth. You're happy, you're very self confident person in general. Words encourage you, like good job, you know, builds up your self esteem. Self efficacy kind of sounds like it could be the same as self esteem, but it's only basically your level of confidence in a task you're trying to complete. So it predicts the work ethic. So if you have a high level of self efficacy, you have personal confidence in yourself in completing the task. It's pretty high, so you're probably going to do a good job. If you have a low level of self efficacy, you're probably going to doubt yourself and probably not perform as well as you would like to. Impact bias. So, impact bias is negative events in the past that cause stress. And so the behavior is driven that there's going to be a negative impact on something, like maybe when you go up for promotion, you're going to assume that you're not going to get it or you're not going to pass the college test, but in reality, it's not as bad than what you would expect it would be. Self-serving bias. So we have the with people with self-serving bias, and I'm guilty of this too. We have the tendency to perceive ourselves as favorable. All right, we're going to take credit for positive performances, but we're going to give blame for negative performances. No one's going to sit there. Most of the time, we're it's like a coping mechanism almost. We're trying to actually not feel bad for something that didn't go well. And this happens. And I'm not saying we all do this because I can take personal responsibility over my mistakes, but we've all been guilty of self serving bias. Negative performances, we definitely don't want to be projected in a negative way. So we use a self serving bias to actually cope with that loss or that negative performance. But we also want to feel good about the successes in our lives too. Other self serving biases, Here's a couple of them that students get incorrect on the exam: false consensus effect versus false uniqueness effect. So consensus effect, excuse me, is just like an underestimation of how others agree with you. So if you're bringing up some kind of political stance, religious stance, or you're a Phoenix Suns fan or Jazz fans, you're going to assume that everybody agrees with you on every point you're making because the point's coming from you. You agree with it yourself as an individual. This is exactly what defines you as a person. So you have a false consensus thinking that there's probably going to be majority of people in the room that's going to agree exactly with you. False uniqueness is basically um, that your individual talents and who you are is unique. So you might play the piano, play basketball, or have some kind of talent uh, that you feel like nobody does it like you at all. I had a plumber who actually said that to me recently. Nobody is as good as him, but actually, the guy I hired before him a few years ago was better than him, believe it or not. Um, Self-handicapping is also a huge issue with self-serving biases. This is setting ourselves up for an excuse like taking an exam the next day not doing so well. You don't blame it on you not knowing the material. It's more of, you know what, I was up late last night with my friend. Um, so you're setting yourself up for those, you're externalizing that mistake or failure by saying that it's not your fault, that it happened to be something else that drove the unsuccessful attempt. So it's a another mental mishap. Self-presentation. Oops, went too far. As you can see, we're at the end. Self-presentation. We like I said before, we want to project ourselves in a positive image. We use social media for that. All I say to students is be yourself. Don't be something that you're not. Don't be afraid of being who you are. It's just like I was told when I was called to be in a church calling in the past. I was like nervous about it. I never was in that church calling before, and I think it was in the elders quorum presidency, and I was really nervous. Bishop told me, and also the elders quorum president told me, just be who I am. The reason why I don't change. The reason why I was called is because of who I am. So be yourself, and that's why you were called. Is we need someone like you here with that personality. Same thing with you here at school or church or out in the social world. Be yourself. Don't hide who you are and be true to yourself. We don't need social media to project something that we're not. Consider, have a and that in itself is a positive image. Um, you know, Using social media to project a different kind of image is not so positive, even though we're trying to present a positive image, because it's not who we are. So that's basically a lot of the concepts that are missed in this first exam for week 2. So if you have any questions, if I didn't go over something that made sense, please let me know.